Okay, I have a confession to make. I feel like I'm in a safe space to admit this, mostly because my wife isn't, in the recording booth with me right now.
Oh,
A few years ago, for her birthday, I thought I had absolutely nailed the perfect gift. I'm talking spreadsheets, review comparisons, checking specs. I was on a mission. I bought her a vacuum cleaner.
oh, oh, Alex, you brave, foolish soul.
But wait, hear me out. It wasn't just any vacuum, it was the absolute flagship model. High tech, cordless, enough suction to pull the carpet off the floor. In my head, I'm thinking, this is a machine of pure utility. I am saving her time. I am optimizing her life.
The Rolls-Royce of suction.
Exactly. And when she unwrapped it, let's just say the silence was louder than the vacuum ever would be.
I can just imagine the scene. You're expecting a ticker tape parade for your thoughtfulness, and you got a very polite, oh, thanks.
That's it, followed by a very quiet dinner where the only sound was the clicking of forks. I was genuinely confused. I felt totally defeated. I thought I was being the ultimate provider, helpful and practical. But apparently there's a massive disconnect between what I thought I was saying and what she actually heard.
That disconnect is exactly what we're digging into today. You were speaking the dialect of utility, and she was likely listening for the dialect of romance. And the tragedy is, you both just missed each other completely.
So, to save everyone else from the vacuum incident of 2021, we are doing a deep dive into the neuroscience of romance. We've got a massive stack of research today, classics like Brain Sex, His Brain, Her Brain by Dr. Walt Larimore, and For Women Only by Shaunti Feldhahn.
And the mission here isn't to figure out who is right or wrong. We aren't here to bash men for being unromantic or women for being demanding. The goal is to decode these foreign dialects using actual hard science. We want to understand why you bought the gadget and why she probably wanted flowers or just words.
So let's start with the hardware. Is there actually a biological excuse for my vacuum cleaner disaster, or am I just dense?
There is absolutely a biological basis. It starts with the architecture of the brain itself. If we look at brain sex and his brain, her brain, the authors break down the physical differences between male and female brains. And one of the biggest culprits in your vacuum incident is the corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum, that's the bundle of nerves connecting the left and right hemispheres, right?
Correct. Think of it as the internet cable connecting two supercomputers. In the female brain, this cable is typically thicker and has significantly more connections. This creates what neuroscientists call a superhighway of crosstalk
Crosstalk between what exactly?
between the logical, verbal centers, usually on the left, and the emotional, intuitive centers on the right. Because of that thicker connection, a woman's brain is constantly integrating how she feels with her ability to speak about it.
So her emotions are physically hardwired to her language center.
In a way, yes. She can often process an emotion and articulate it almost simultaneously. The data just flows freely. But for the male brain, the architecture is different. The corpus callosum is thinner. The connections are fewer.
So I have less bandwidth.
You have less direct traffic between those specific centers. The male brain is more compartmentalized. Researchers often use the analogy of waffles versus spaghetti.
I've heard this. Men are waffles.
Right. Men process life in boxes. Work is a box. Kids are a box. Sports is a box. And crucially, the feeling box is often separate from the talking box.
So because that bridge, the corpus callosum, is thinner, it takes more effort and time for a man to grab an emotion from one side, ship it over to the other, and turn it into a sentence. That explains so much. When my wife asks me, "What are you feeling right now?" and I just stare at her, it's not that I'm stonewalling, I'm literally buffering.
You are buffering, and this leads to a fascinating concept from brain sex called token theory.
Yeah.
This is directly related to your vacuum cleaner.
Token theory. Okay, explain this to me.
Because men often struggle to bridge that gap with words, because it's biologically expensive for them to do so, they rely on physical objects or tokens to bridge the gap for them.
So the object is a placeholder for the emotion.
Yes. In your brain, that vacuum cleaner wasn't a chore assignment. It was a physical symbol. It represented, I care about your time, I want to provide for you, and I want to solve your problems.
Yeah.
You were handing her a token of love because you couldn't verbally express all that nuance easily.
But she didn't have the decoder ring.
No. Because her brain is wired for that verbal emotional superhighway, she doesn't need the token to bridge the gap. She values the words and the emotional connection directly.
Right.
So when you hand her a cleaning appliance, without the verbal translation, she just sees a cleaning appliance.
That is a brutal translation error. I'm speaking in objects and she's listening in sonnets.
And it goes even deeper regarding why you chose a functional object. Shaunti Feldhahn discusses this in For Women Only. She talks about the providing dialect.
Which is the idea that working hard is a love language.
It's almost primal. For many men, the act of provision, fixing the sink, paying the mortgage, buying the high-tech vacuum, is their primary form of love talk.
You think you are screaming, "I adore you," every time you pay the electric bill.
I mean, honestly, yeah, I feel that. I'm out there slaying the dragon, or at least the spreadsheet so she can be safe and comfortable. That feels like love to me.
But here is the catch. Unless you translate that for her, she might just see it as duty. She sees paid bills, not a love letter. She's looking for emotional reassurance while you're providing structural safety.
You're building the house, but she wants you to sit in it and talk to her.
Exactly.
So we've got this biological setup where I'm handing over tokens and fixing sinks to show love, and she's waiting for a verbal connection. But this disconnect isn't just about gifts. It happens when we're just trying to hang out on a Friday night. Oh, the leisure time wars, absolutely. This brings us to a really interesting distinction found in a few of the sources. It's the difference between face-to-face and shoulder-to-shoulder.
Give me a rundown. This sounds like geometry class.
It kind of is. One study cited in Love and Respect observed how adolescents bond. When they looked at teenage girls, how did they sit?
Knowing my own teenage years, probably in a circle or huddled up.
Exactly. They turn their chairs to face one another. Direct eye contact. Relational flow. For the female brain, intimacy is typically anchored in the interaction itself.
It's about looking at each other and sharing the internal world.
Yes. And the boys.
The boys sat side by side, shoulder to shoulder. They looked ahead, usually at a game, a screen, or a sport.
Right. We look at the objective. For men, doing something together is the connection. The intimacy happens in the shared focus on a third object. In fact, and this is key for the male brain, prolonged, intense eye contact while discussing deep emotions can actually trigger a fight or flight response.
Wait, really?
Yes, it can feel confrontational, it can signal a challenge.
That is validating. Because sometimes when we have those we need to talk moments and she's staring right into my soul, I don't feel intimate. I feel like I'm in a police interrogation.
That's your biology talking. You're wired to scan the horizon, not the person next to you. But look at the conflict this creates. Friday night comes around. You say, hey, let's play a video game, or let's watch this movie.
I'm inviting her to sit shoulder to shoulder. I'm saying, come be with me in my cave. Let's look at something together.
Exactly. But she hears, I don't want to look at you. I want to look at a screen. So she says, no, turn off the TV. Let's just sit and talk.
And I hear, I want to interrogate you.
Or at least I want to do something that requires a lot of biological energy from you. The tragedy is that you are both rejecting the other's bid for connection because you don't recognize the format.
You think she's being boring or nagging. She thinks you're being emotionally distant.
When really you're just sitting in different chairs.
That reframes the whole he never wants to spend time with me argument. If he's asking you to watch the game, he is asking to spend time with you, just his way.
Correct. And realizing that shoulder to shoulder is a valid form of intimacy can change everything for a relationship. It validates the male form of bonding.
Okay, so we've covered the living room and the gift exchange. Now we have to go to the most dangerous territory of all, the bedroom.
The bedroom, where all these biological wires really get crossed.
The sources use a kitchen appliance analogy here too, which I love, the microwave and the crock pot.
It's a classic metaphor found in Vertical Marriage and His Brain, Her Brain. It simplifies a complex physiological reality, but it holds up. Generally speaking, men are microwaves.
We heat up fast.
Very fast. Physiologically, men can reach sexual arousal almost instantly. Testosterone is a powerful, immediate driver. You're ready to cook at the push of a button.
And women are the crock pots.
Slow cookers. They require a warming up process. But here is the crucial insight that most guys miss. For the crock pot, the heat source isn't just physical. It is mental and emotional.
I remember reading in the 7-Minute Marriage Solution that for a woman, foreplay basically starts when you wake up in the morning.
It does. It involves non-sexual touch, listening, helping with the kids. If you ignore the crock pot all day, if you leave it unplugged, you can't just walk in at 10 p.m., hit a button, and expect dinner.
The circuitry doesn't work that way.
Not at all.
This creates a vicious cycle, though, doesn't it? Because men often use sex to get emotionally connected.
Yes. For him, the physical act breaks down the barriers. He feels close because of the sex. Physical first, emotional second.
But for her,
she usually needs to feel emotionally connected in order to get physically interested. Emotional first, physical second.
So he's waiting for the physical to open up emotionally, and she's waiting for the emotional to open up physically. And they both just stall out.
It's a classic standoff. And there's another layer to this from some of the other sources regarding sensory input. It's the visual versus the auditory.
Is this the lights on versus lights off debate?
It is. And again, this isn't just preference, it's neurology. The male brain is wired to be stimulated visually. This isn't a character flaw or him being shallow. It's biology. The male brain responds intensely to visual cues. He is moved by what he sees.
So he wants the lights on because that's his stimulant.
Right. But the female brain, it is much more wired to be stimulated by what she hears and what she feels. The auditory and tactile senses are biologically more potent for her in this context.
So pillow talk, words, gentle touch, that isn't just nice to have, that is the engine.
It is the main event for her neurology. That's why many women prefer low light or lights off. It allows them to shut down the visual distractions, which aren't their primary fuel anyway, and focus on the touch and the voice.
That's a huge insight. If a guy is silent but trying to set up a visual scene, he's totally missing the mark for her brain.
He's offering a microwave dinner to a slow cooker.
And he's trying to stimulate her eyes when he should be stimulating her ears.
You got it.
Okay, we've laid out the problems. We've got different wiring, different definitions of intimacy, different operating speeds. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. But the sources do give us some practical ways to hack this, right? How do we actually fix it?
Absolutely. The goal isn't to change your partner's brain. You can't. The goal is to learn a second language. Let's look at Cherish by Gary Thomas. He gives some great advice for men on how to speak face-to-face even if it feels unnatural.
What's the move?
There's a story about a husband who bought season tickets to the ballet.
Let me guess. He had a secret passion for tutus.
He hated it.
Yeah.
He absolutely dreaded every performance. But he bought the tickets, and he went, and this is the key. He didn't complain. He realized that for his wife, the face-to-face connection of getting dressed up, going out and sharing an experience was her love language.
He prioritized her need for connection over his need for entertainment.
Exactly. He learned to speak your dialect. And connecting this back to your vacuum incident, if you understand that words matter more than tokens, you can adjust. You know, the 5 love languages reminds us that acts of service, like doing the dishes or vacuuming, can be romantic, but only if you frame it correctly.
So I can't just vacuum and expect credit.
If you vacuum, grunt, and walk away, it's a chore. But if you vacuum and say, I'm doing this so you can relax, we can sit on the couch and talk for 20 minutes, that is romance.
You are translating the token into words.
You're feeding the crock pot.
That is a subtle but powerful shift. Okay, what about the women? How do they cross the bridge?
They need to occasionally visit the shoulder-to-shoulder world. Kingdom Marriage has a great anecdote from Tony Evans. He talks about how much he loves it when his wife simply holds his bag or joins him in his world.
It sounds so simple, holding the bag.
It is. The advice is for women to occasionally step into that side-by-side mode. Sit with him while he watches the game. Go fishing. Watch him play the video game.
But here's a trap. Don't demand deep conversation while doing it right.
Spot on. If you sit next to him during the 4th quarter and ask, where's our relationship going? You have broken this spell. Just be there. Accept his presence as his love. If you're sitting next to him and he's happy you're there, that is the interaction.
That takes so much pressure off. You don't have to fill the silence.
And there is one final concept that bridges both worlds beautifully. We call it the choice.
This comes up in Cherish too, doesn't it?
It does. And it's referenced by Mark Gungor in Laugh Your Way. In a world of infinite distractions, the most romantic thing you can do is choose your partner over the screen. And this is especially powerful for the man to do.
Because he's the visual creature.
Exactly. Because the male brain is so visually stimulated by screens and action, when a man deliberately turns off the TV, puts the phone face down, and turns his chair to look at his wife.
That's a loud signal.
It's massive. He is physically demonstrating, you are more interesting to me than all this visual candy. He is engaging in a relational act despite his wiring.
And for the woman, that fulfills the face-to-face need immediately. It creates that superhighway connection.
It turns a token moment into a connection moment.
It's funny, looking back at the vacuum cleaner incident, if I had brought the vacuum home, but also brought flowers and sat her down, phone off, and said, I bought this because I want you to have more free time so we can spend it together.
The reaction would have been entirely different. You would have been translating. You would have been speaking face-to-face while delivering a token.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means we need to stop getting mad at our partners for having different biological operating systems.
The male and female brains are not wrong. They are just different. The friction comes from expecting the other person to process the world exactly the way you do. We expect our partners to read our minds, but they're reading a completely different script.
It's about translation.
It is. It's about grace. When you see a behavior that looks unromantic, pause and ask, is this a shoulder-to-shoulder bid? Is this a token? Is this a microwave moment?
Here's a thought to leave you with, and maybe a little challenge for the week. For the guys listening, plan a date this week. But here's the rule. No gadgets, no phones on the table. Focus entirely on her. Try to speak that face-to-face dialect.
And for the women, join him in one of his hobbies this week. Watch the game, sit in the garage while he works, whatever it is. Just exist shoulder to shoulder without complaining and see what happens.
And next time your partner offers you a vacuum cleaner, maybe it's practical help, maybe it's a silent car ride, can you stop and try to translate that into "I love you" before you get frustrated?
Stay curious about the person across the dinner table. They might just be waiting for you to turn your chair around.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. See you next time.